100 Days Collective.
This is Take Two.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello.
How are you doing, by the way?
I'm doing all right, thanks.
We got into it. I stopped him midway through a solid round.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and nice to be here.
I'm going to tell you something, and I held back on telling you this when we first arrived. But when I started this podcast, it's on my bucket list. Like once we're done, I'm going to tick it off, which is I want to learn about the traveller community.
Right, okay.
I think, and I'm sure that you agree with it, is that you are severely underrepresented when it comes to media and content.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever travellers are spoken about, it's usually a protest that dwindles down after a week or so, unfortunately. So thank you so much for joining me. Or
even not, or even worse, most of the media coverage, particularly in the past, and we've tried to do a lot of work to change it, was extremely negative.
Exactly.
Which reinforces stereotypes and reinforces the racism and exclusion, So this, so hopefully, with more travellers involved and indeed more shows like this and other shows, that begins to change, because it does influence how people see the world. I mean, all we have to do is look at, not comparing travellers to the situation that's happening in Ukraine, but you just have to look at Russia and the control of the media and see, how that influences what people believe and what they think, Not saying that the media is totally controlled, but if that mindset is there and people are excluded from that, then that voice doesn't come in. And, the reality in people's lives doesn't come into it either.
And also I think it's good that the likes of you and Senator Eileen Flynn speak out and all that, where you're representing what a traveller means beyond just the cultures, and even based on your education and and your activism.
I think there's particularly in the last 20 years or so, 30 years, I've been involved quite a long time in traveller activism. And more and more travellers now are involved across the country, And so that does make a difference, And there's a diversity in the community as well. It's like any community, There's not one way of being a traveller, or I'm sure there's not one way of being Maltese,
for sure.
There's diversity in the community. And I think, stereotypes doesn't allow for diversity,
No, and I actually have stereotypes written down over here. So let's start from the basics, right? For anyone, what does being a traveller mean?
Well, you're born into a culture, like any culture, and, that culture has many aspects to it, in terms of, nomadism, for instance, traveling. I was saying earlier on, I was born in Dublin, but I traveled quite a lot. So, so although I'm from Dublin, I identify with Dublin kind of in one way, but I'm a traveller, that kind of way. And Irish, there should be, so nomadism, but also then the experience of growing up as a traveller has been different. Now, it might be very similar. There might be similarities now because a lot of travellers have been forced to settle and there's less travelling. So, but still it's different. It's a different kind of way of being. I suppose it's like any two cultures, if you compare them, you see there's some similarities in them, but there's also some differences, Language, for instance, the music, stories, beliefs, now not all the people, but it'd be common enough, things, norms, values, traditions, and also even employment would have been very different. A lot of travellers would have been self-employed, and trades and crafts and that, particularly prior to industrialization, and this is where I think, the situation that travellers are in today are certainly as a result of government action, as a result of industrialization. We moved to industrialization around the 1950s, late 40s, early 50s, to an industrialized capitalist economy. And that took away a lot of the the work that travellers did, which the settled community were dependent on. So there was an interdependency there. And when that happened, a lot of policies were made towards travellers, a lot of assimilation policies and stuff like that, and others. The idea was to kind of solve what they call the itinerant problem once and for all. That was, so I'd encourage people to read that. There was a report done in 1963. Actually, it's very interesting that they did similar reports. Like it was based on the whole idea of subculture of poverty. Yeah?
Okay.
And I don't want to go into it too much, but the subculture of poverty's theory is that as a result of poverty, a culture emerges.
Okay.
Yeah. And this culture continues then. Yeah. Whereas travellers had been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yeah, they did rise up.
So this idea, but it was used to actually kind of undermine the culture. Yeah, they did the same. Interestingly enough, to produce some of the similar reports for the black people in the United States in the 1960s.
Yeah.
So it was happening in other places. Likewise, the Sami people in Finland and other areas. So there was this. But for travellers, certainly that was a kind of the state. Every arm of the state was used to try and eradicate traveller culture. So that's why I think a lot of the problems that we have today. And I think that mindset, there's some of that mindset that's still there. That mindset hasn't changed, even though the language has changed. It's moved from itinerants to travellers, from assimilation to integration to inclusion. All of that's great, but actually the changes on the ground is what tell us that this has, in fact, many people would say it has got worse. If you look at the statistics, tells us that it has got worse.
So right now, travellers right now, just your regular traveller family, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
There's 31,000 travellers in Ireland.
Currently. Yeah, or thereabouts. There's always been counting people is a political issue, just to say that.
Okay, carry on, yes.
Because, there's always been an undercount in local authorities because they didn't want to have to accommodate the travellers in their area.
Stop.
So, and then also travellers who was living in a house. You weren't deemed to be a traveller any longer because it was seen as you were only a traveller because you were travelling. So there was this undermining of culture, because culture is much more than the nomadism. Nomadism is only one part of it. It's like the tinsmithing, which was only one part of it, or other aspects of it. But there was always an undercount. So it's only in recent times that we've started to kind of, there was no kind of question in the census up until I think about 2016.
That's crazy.
Crazy. So there was that. So there was always an undercount. So even at that, there's probably a lot more travellers who's not identified in there.
In fact, I remember coming across that statistic and being like, no, it can't be. Like it's looking at the number, it looked too small. Yeah. In my opinion, anyways. But I don't know if it could just be my exposure to. Well,
also now there is a high rate of kind of mortality in the traveller community because there's a very low life expectancy, about 15 years less than the settled community.
I remember reading an article that said that men are considered middle-aged at 19 or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't say they're considered middle-aged
that's
at 19.
What I was saying as
no,
well.
I don't think, they wouldn't be considered middle-aged.
Maybe they were exaggerating.
But certainly, I think maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but certainly, it's a very young population. So, you have a lot of younger marriages in the community, but you have a lower life expectancy. So, it's nearly the reverse of the settled community when you see the life expectancy. And that actually has got worse. In the 1980s, there was a study done by Dr. Joe Barry, 1987, on travellers' health. And at that stage, mortality rates among traveller men, was 12 years, I think it was 12 years less than the settled community. Now it's 15 years less. In 2010, there was a study done by UCD, and they found that it's now 15 years less. And it's the same for women. It has increased. Mortality rate has got worse for traveller women. So some of the statistics has actually got worse since the 1980s.
And considering that technology, when it comes to health in general, has improved drastically.
Has improved.
Within 5 years, you can even say, you know what I mean? Which is
So like, and also the infant mortality rate hasn't changed. It's 3 times higher. It was 3 times higher in the 1980s. It's still 3 times higher now for travellers.
And I'm going to, like, pardon me if I ask very basic questions sometimes, but I really want to make sure that like everyone is understanding. But when let's say infant mortality and all that kind of stuff, travelers, pregnant traveler women are going to hospitals, right? Or is it's not childbirths at home? So,
no, it's not childbirths at home. It's hospitals.
So there isn't anything within the culture that I'm trying to think. Is it? I think it's Jehovah's Witness or something, which is a group that kind of draws the line when it comes to certain like medical procedures and all that.
No, that wouldn't be the case at all. I mean, really, the conditions that travellers are living in and the exclusion and the racism that they face contributes to this scenario.
Yeah.
So there's, and the lack of culturally inclusive kind of services as well. So, I mean, in that study, I think in a study in 2017, or it could have been 2010, the All Ireland Traveller Health Study, or indeed the other study in 2017, about 40% of travellers who attended the health service said that they felt discriminated against. Now that's the health services. So we need to change. We need to change that picture. Otherwise, we're going to continue.
It's going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, and it is getting worse. I mean, one of the key things that has got worse in that time, and we didn't have it, is mental health.
The suicide epidemic. Yes,
we have. That's got in the last, the last 20 years or so. It's now we're in a crisis point. And we can see the rise of that as well. And that coincides with other things that happened. In 2000, and I think it was 2004, 2003, 2004, there was a woman called Mary Rose Walker that did a study on suicide. And these studies are available, if people want to look them up. And she found that suicide was 3 times higher at that stage than in the settled community. Now, that was 2003, 2004, 3 times higher. The last study that was done was in 2010. It was 7 times higher. Now, no other study has been done since.
Wow.
So that was the figures that you hear in terms of 7 times higher was done in 2010.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been another study since. So,
for sure.
But them figures, like if we look at what happened during that time, we see a lot of kind of legislation coming in, like the anti-trespass legislation, which actually prevents travellers from travelling. So you don't see travellers parked on the side of the road anymore. You don't, like if you had to come here in, say, 1999, you'd see a lot of travellers throughout the country.
I wanted to ask you actually, what was your childhood like as a traveller?
My childhood, I was born in the Coombe in the Liberties, the old Coombe in the Liberties, and the first place my mother we camped was on a place called the Long Mile Road. This was where travellers moved to when they first came to Dublin, and this, so we were there. Ballyfermot at the time, a lot of travellers had moved to Ballyfermot from the country, so we were living in a barrel top wagon. I don't know if you've...
I've seen photos. Yeah. I'll add one here because it's a video anyway. So
we were living in a barrel top wagon, and so we were living out around Ballyfermot, out around the Naas Road, out around that area of Dublin 10. At the time, a lot of travellers had moved up to Dublin, and because there was no work in the country, people had to move to the cities. It was 1959, so it was the late 50s, and then into the early 60s. And so at that time, there was, kind of people were being moved all the time by the corporation. In fact, you wouldn't be allowed, the minute you pull in, somebody would move you on. So they didn't want travellers stopping anywhere. And then, so we grew up in Ballyfermot, in and around Ballyfermot. Cherry Orchard was a site of huge resistance, one of the first resistances in terms of travellers. Mobilising and digging a trench to stop an eviction, and built their own school, for instance, and the council actually pulled it down and burned it.
Did you go to that school?
I don't know. I don't remember the school. No, I was very young. I would have been about maybe 4 or 5 at the time. That was in Cherry Orchard. I probably did actually go into it, but I don't remember being there because if there was something happened, this was a big field. Yeah.
Okay.
You have to understand. This was a big field opposite Cherry Orchard Hospital. I don't know if you know Cherry Orchard, if people are watching. But Cherry Orchard Hospital is at the top of Ballyfermot. It's at the other end of Ballyfermot. If you're going towards Clondalkin or Palmerstown, yeah. And it used to be the Fever Hospital, yeah. And once you got to a certain stage in Ballyfermot, the houses stopped, and then you had a hospital. On the opposite side of the road was a huge big field, like a huge big field. And I think there must have been about 200 or 300 travellers on the field. And they were living in bar-top wagons, and some people were living in tents. A lot of people were living in tents at that stage. Okay. Didn't have a barrel-top. They had a tent. And so anything that was happening in the field, especially around kids, everybody knew about it. Everybody kind of would be on it. So we were there for a while until everyone got evicted off it eventually. So we did. And then we kind of moved on to a site, and that in Ballyfermot, one of the first sites, still there. It's elaborate park. It's not in great condition. It's they built it in 1967.
Okay.
It wasn't travellers that came up with the idea of sites. It was the local authorities that came up with the idea. Actually, this committee, who was part of the government's response, which was the report I said earlier on. They went off to Holland, and they had a look at what they were doing in Holland to travellers, and there's Dutch travellers and Roma and different groups. Now, Dutch travellers are very like Irish travellers in a way as well.
Okay, didn't know that.
And to be different from Roma, there's different groups within the whole community. And anyway, in Holland, they had built these sites, yeah, and this group thought, oh, this would be a good idea. They were built in a way that they were meant to be a transition into settlement, yeah?
Okay. This
was your transition into settlement, so they couldn't be too comfortable. So a lot of the sites that was built wasn't built to be comfortable. They were built that you'd move into a house, that they would move you into a house and that you would settle and give up your way of travelling. Yeah?
I see.
So this was a transition into settlement. And even some of the sites, if you look at some of the sites, they're absolutely, they're not really nice places to live,
I'm going to make the assumption that travellers were not consulted in this decision of the sites.
No, there was no consultation around, now
what's needed.
Yeah. So a lot of the sites, if you look at the sites particularly, they were built very badly. There's no play areas in them. There's no greenery at all. There's no amenities. A lot of them are built beside canals. I mean, that one that I lived in Ballyfermot, and I'm not, I think it's, a lot of people live there. So, it's, it was just where they were built. They were built in an industrial estate. There was a canal. There was pylons that run over them, big pylons,
Oh, wow.
I mean, you wouldn't, housing estates doesn't have a pylon running over your head, because it's meant to be not safe, So some of the places that were, and children kind of, and a lot of these places now are overcrowded because they haven't been building travel accommodation for quite a long time. So, even though as I said earlier on, they have the money and put it back. But that was where I grew up. I grew up in that. But we moved out of the site.
Okay, and then you just back on the road too?
Mainly around Dublin and around, kind of County Dublin.
East Coast, kind of.
East Coast, yeah.
Okay.
And around that. And, kind of my father had kept horses. So he went out, but he had a four-wheeler. It was called a four-wheeler. It's a big cart, but four-wheeler, one of them ones. And so he went out and collected scrap and did all of that. And, so I did. And so we worked at that, and then I went to school on that site, which was an all-traveller school.
Okay. And how was that for you?
For a few years. It was all right. I mean, I didn't learn very much in it. I mean, I don't know whether that's a reflection of the teachers or a reflection of where I was at, but didn't learn very much. And then I went to a settled school for a short period of time. And I think that was about the size of it,
Okay.
I left school when I was about 12.
We're going to talk about Traveller everything.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you one thing.
Yeah, go on.
Could you think of a memory or a story that really makes you smile, that travellers listening to this can feel a little bit nostalgic and proud to be a traveller?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, most of the stuff happened within the community. There was no kind of, up until, maybe anything you'd see on television. You wouldn't see travellers on television a lot, and it's only in the last 20 or 30 years that you see travellers on television, and, but of course there are moments, kind of, like that really kind of, that you do feel very proud, kind of to be a traveller, kind of, whether that's, somebody representing Ireland in the Olympics, like Francie Barrett, for instance,
Okay.
Carrying the flag for Ireland, even though, kind of, he didn't get the best treatment in the world, even though he represented Ireland, But that moments like that, you think, wow, against all the odds, Francie used to train in a container,
What sport did he compete in?
In boxing.
Oh.
In a container in Galway, and like other travellers, that's really kind of struggled and come through that, kind of.
Yeah, the story.
Against all the odds, that's what kind of, what I kind of look on. Nan Joyce, in 1982, there was a huge protest against travellers on the one of the reasons I got involved as a traveller activist was because of the protest that was going on in Tala, on the Tala bypass, and there was loads of travellers, but there was all these settled vigilantes, who coming out marching in families, with small kids and threatening and intimidating and burning trailers as well and setting up roadblocks, and nobody was arrested, nobody was doing anything. These guys were setting up roadblocks, and you had to show that you lived on the road, on that road to get into the area. You had to show these was vigilantes, and so Nan, in the middle of all this chaos, who was quite an activist and a relative of mine actually, ran for a general election, and got quite a lot of votes because there was a number of silent people, a silent majority who couldn't come out and say they supported travellers because of the intimidation.
I see. By
the vigilantes. Now, there's quite a lot of vigilantes as well, but there was more people who were staying silent, and Nan brought that silent voice out.
Amazing.
And got it out. So that was quite a moment. That was the first time ever that a traveller ran for election in Ireland,
And won?
No, she didn't. Unfortunately, she didn't win.
Okay.
There was trumped-up charges brought up during the election, which was dropped later, and Nan, kind of. But anyway, that's But she got enough votes to kind
prove
of
people
to kill the opposition in terms of the vigilantism that was going on, which was great, So times like that, you think, Likewise, Rosella MacDonald, there was a woman, she had 12 children at the time, living in very, very bad accommodation in Tala. She took a case to the High Court around accommodation.
Okay.
Mary Robinson actually was the barrister at the time who became the president of Ireland.
Okay.
And they won the case. And it turned on its head all the evictions that was happening. Like in terms of, you had to be offered accommodation by a local authority before they could evict you. Whereas before they just pull up at 3 or 4 in the morning and you had no rights at all, no matter how many children you had or what situation you were in. And times like that, you kind of think, wow, kind of. But there's also other things, there's musicians and singers who, who's reached kind of a certain amount of fame as well.
Yeah.
I have a cousin, Paddy Keenan, he plays the uilleann pipes, master of the pipes, so he's internationally renowned piper. People like Pecker Dunn, who's dead now, Margaret Barry, who got award for cultural award here in Ireland, won the cultural awards here in Ireland. There's many people like that, and now, even in terms of right now, there's many people who's really kind of against all the odds, against all of that, who's coming through, and I think they inspire, and that's what, kind of younger people also look up to and say, well,
for sure.
You
need those models at the end of the day.
You do, and bringing back that and the language, a revival of the language, because the system was so undermined traveller culture so much that children going through school were kind of, you weren't allowed to be a traveller really, you know, kind of, you weren't encouraged, you were discouraged, so your language, everything, you know, kind of was discouraged. So you can imagine the impact that has had on the culture, you know, and on the internalization of that by younger travellers as well, where they have to hide their identity, you know, to get into an interview, you know.
That's the other thing that I was going to ask you, because of like one thing that was shocking to me when I started to learn about like travellers is that quite often they have to, like, let's say if they want to like book a birthday party or something, they file like a different name.
Yeah, or get it, or like, I mean,
or a wedding.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's going on right now. I know people right now, travellers right now. Now, I mean, right now.
Yes.
Who's looking for hotels to get married in and can't get a hotel. And one woman told me about an incident where, you know, she went into a hotel and there was you know, a woman from another country on the desk, you know, and from a foreign country, and the traveller woman said, "Can I book the hotel?" And she said, "Oh yeah, sure." And she started to put it in the book. And then this other Irish woman who was over in another desk said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And she came back and said, "Sorry, we have 2 diaries. Sorry, I didn't realize we had 2 diaries, and I'm sorry that date is booked up." But that's a common, you know, and it's so distressing for people getting married. So for young travellers getting married. Now that's going on right now. Now I know people who's actually now, today, looking for a hotel to get married in and can't get it and that's because of the racism that's gone on in Ireland. So even with the equality legislation that came out in 2000, I was very involved in it, and I was on the board of the Equality Authority. It hasn't changed that. It hasn't. Mm-hmm. You know, that's still very much there, and they say, "Oh no, we booked out on that date," or, you know, we're double booked. So travellers get settled people to book the hotel, try and book a hotel for them. It's
horrible. The case that I saw on Twitter was about a funeral service, where it got shut down afterwards. Like the guards showed up at the pub.
The whole town sometimes closes down when there's a funeral. You know, that was a common practice. That, you know, a funeral is on. And no matter what family it is in any part of the country, the town closes down. And
is there a reason besides racism being like?
No, because you can't do that to a whole community. I mean, of course, like, I mean, if we were to do that, no one in Dublin would be served with all the shootings and stabbings. You know, kind of, you wouldn't.
That's
sorry.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly, and that's what I was trying to like figure out, which is, of course, there are people, and we will discuss it, there are people within communities, and you actually, I have your quotes over here where you talk about feud and conflict within the community that has to end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's reasons for that. But of course, like in every community, you're going to have, you know, a whole range of different people.
Exactly.
You know, so, but like to say that, like, I know Martin Luther King in his, you know, kind of in that, you know, I have a dream speech. He talks about that idea of, you know, kind of that, you know, that really it's about the group that you come from. It's not about, you know, you as your character or your kind of just you. You know, it's the group. That's what's seen, you know. So it has nothing to do with you, you know. So if you were born a traveller, it doesn't matter, you know, whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, because you're a traveller, and because that stereotype and that racism is so ingrained in Irish society, that became so normalised, and still is. I mean, if you, like, you know, if you hear people talking about travellers, they're not going. A lot of the time, they're not going to be using the word traveller. You know,
it's a K word.
Yeah, they're going to be. You know, and that seems to be very normal. You know, so when a traveller's around, they'll use a different word. You know, they're kind of, but most of the time, you know, and I know a lot of settled people who work with travellers who lost a lot of friends because of the racism among their own friends. So they lost a lot of friends working with travellers because they couldn't. They were saying, "Well, hang on a second," and they ended up challenging a lot of their own friends.
As they should.
You know, but their friends, sometimes you lose friends, and even families, you know, families kind of, they don't separate, but they certainly fall out over it, because some families are quite, you know, racist towards travellers. And that would have been ingrained, that would have been the norm growing up for settled people in this society. It would have been impossible to escape it. You'd want to be living somewhere on the moon or something
Yeah.
to escape it. Really, it's like it was so prevalent and still is in society that it's, you know, kind of it's still there, and like there's more subtle ways now that it's practiced, but it's actually still having that impact on travellers. I mean, like, all you have to do is look at the statistics and see where travellers are at, and you know, that's the reality of it.
And does this go back to the lack of education on the traveller community?
No, education. No, it doesn't go back to the lack of education. Certainly, the education system in Ireland, and particularly, you know, kind of now, you know, if you look at kind of the education system. For travellers, it was about kind of trying. It wasn't even about education. Travellers wasn't educated properly in this country. Travellers was put into a special classes. They weren't. I never got homework, you know, my whole life.
Seriously.
Now, some people might say, "Great, she's got no homework."
I'm sure as a kid you were like,
"No,
awesome.
I wanted homework.
You wanted homework?
I didn't have that.
I understand that entirely.
You didn't get it any time. You never got it. You never got homework.
But that's setting. You're going to be like, no shit.
There was no
there,
expectations for travellers. You were never going to amount to anything. This is the whole system. This was the whole education system. Like, if you taught, and it'd be interesting to get other travellers' views on this as well.
Oh yeah.
You know, so if there's travellers listening in or whatever,
reach out to me.
You know, yeah. Just send a text or whatever. And not that I'm pushing out your show there, but
oh no, please do. Carry on.
You know, but no, travellers didn't get homework, and that's up until recently. That's up until quite recently. They got no homework. In fact, as a community worker, when I was working with a group, I was helping run a course with travellers out in the south side of Dublin. It was back in the I'd say around the 90s, early 90s, and. I was doing training with them around community development because I studied community development, and you know, in college in the 80s.
Yeah, was it hard for you considering the fact that you were not given homework to then like go into the education
you
system?
Didn't do any of the lessons.
Yeah,
you were sitting at the back of the class, or you know, and so you.
How did you find college? So
college was a real struggle.
Yeah,
college was especially when I went back in the 1980s.
Like, kudos to you, honestly.
You know,
like.
It was a real struggle. And, you know, kind of at the time, you know, going back and doing that was very, very challenging, you know.
I can only imagine.
But I got through it, and kind of, you know, now it's still very low. I mean, less than 1% of travellers are now in university. But at that stage, there was...
Were you encouraged by your family to go, or did you find some backlash?
They weren't. They were saying, like, I remember being my parents saying, because like one thing is that your parents always try to protect you, yeah. Parents try to protect you,
yes,
from disappointment. Yeah?
I see.
And I remember my mother, she hardly went to school, but she was really well educated. She hardly went at all. She could really kind of, you know, but she said, would you not try and find something else, you know, kind of do something else? Because she felt this is only going to end in tears for you, you know, that kind of way. And like I said, no, this is what I'm doing, and we'll see where it goes, you know. But I had come through activism into that. So I was I wasn't doing it as a career, kind of. I was doing it as an activist.
Be a better activist.
How to mobilize people. That's what I wanted to kind of study, you know. So for me, it was a little bit different. But your parents always try to protect you from that kind of thing. So they will, you know, because that has been the experience of many travellers to go to school. What's the point? The question is, well, what's the point if you can't get a job, or you can't? It's you know, kind of you study for this and you can't get a job. I
appreciate you actually saying that right now, because I think a lot of people perceive it as, their own parents aren't encouraging their kids to pursue an education, blah 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 blah. When in reality, the parents only know so much.
Yeah, but also to do, like, you know, my mother and father, and certainly any travellers I know, always made a huge effort, even when they were on the side of the road, to get their kids into the local school. And certainly my mother did as well, you know. And that was the norm, that traveller families tried to get them into the local school, kind of, you know, and get them as educated as they could, because, you know, they felt that was necessary. But they also felt that, look, kind of there's a huge amount of disappointment because the education system wasn't educating travellers properly. Like, or if there was a few travellers in a school, it didn't matter about their ages, they'd be all put into a special class. So you could have like 7-year-olds in with 12-year-olds or, kind of, and you weren't given lessons. You could draw on that, but you weren't really given lessons, Now that's began to change, but like you can see why we have a whole, range of travellers, and travellers aren't, they're smart people. And, of course you get a diversity in the community, but travellers are generally, like most of the travellers who went out to college, did it on their own steam after as young adults, both men and women who had families like myself, who went back and did it, and who had very little education. Some of them emerged from school really illiterate after years. My brother came out of school and he was illiterate after doing years in school, and like now he taught himself. So like a lot of people taught themselves, kind of,
It's interesting. You said at the start of this conversation, you said they're naturally like self-employed, like it's nearly an entrepreneurial.
It was,
aspect.
You found,
self-taught, self-employed.
Yeah, well, it was like that. Well, it was passed on as well, from intergenerational skills was passed on, and there was a break in that with industrialization because a lot of people were tinsmiths or, doing other crafts and stuff like that, or things. But with industrialization, plastics and mechanization, that all changed that, it changed that whole picture in some ways. But there was a different kind of response to the settled people who was like small farmers and that who had to change than there was for travellers, So it was.
In what other ways are travellers discriminated against in society?
I think there's very few ways that they're not, kind of like, and to goods and services, and particularly kind of, there's a lot of similarities between other groups. Like if you take African Americans in the US, or if you take the Aboriginal community, or if you take, the Maori community, or any of them communities, you see very similar pictures, First Nations, and we have a lot of contacts with some of them groups. Like in First Nations, the huge, very high suicide rates, alcohol and drug problems, huge unemployment, very, very similar. There's a lot of similarities to it, but it's like it's across the board, Now you might have one traveller getting through that net, whether it's the college or whether it's in the job. An example of this, and I'm not saying any of us are going to reach the presidency of Ireland, but if you look at Barack Obama, for instance, people thought the election of Barack Obama was going to be the end of, kind of, not the end, but certainly the beginning of the end of racism in the US.
Yes.
No way.
No.
Because it's like this thing, you can have somebody coming through, like I talked about Francie Barrett on one level, representing Ireland and carrying the flag. There was no change at all towards the attitude to travellers on the ground.
For sure. And I think that comes with just policy making in general, and unfortunately, where the media plays a role in things, where sometimes I think people think that talking about something is enough when it's not really the case. So media coverage of Barack Obama is not enough.
Yeah. Barack Obama, I really kind of admire Barack Obama. And he's inspirational and,
for sure,
kind of, and I agree with a lot of what he said.
But a lot of people also were then just like, no, you're not one of us anymore. Like you're one of the few, or that sort of thing as well. Yeah, it can happen that way as well, and like you look at it and you think, well, what changed? What has changed for, when you see all the things that happen in the States, and I don't want to focus too much in the States, but when you see all the stuff that happens to the Black community in the States, you think, well, what change has that made for people on the ground? Likewise, we've been in meetings and we've had reports and we've had recommendations, we've had task forces, we've had advisory groups, we've had, but on the ground here in Ireland, it hasn't translated into change for travellers, Because it doesn't get votes. Yeah, it does. And we're a small community. So we're not, we're a small community. So we need
the support of settled
Yes.
people. We need settled people to say, listen,
Yeah.
because otherwise this doesn't end well,
No.
This situation doesn't end well,
For sure. In 2017, you spoke up about the disproportionate number of travelers in prison population.
Yeah, and if you look at that, there was the Irish Penal Reform Trust did a study, and they found that traveller women are 22 times more likely to be arrested and imprisoned than settled women, and 11% more likely for traveller men to be imprisoned.
I'm going to ask you this now. Is it because of the poverty that they are more prone to committing crimes, or is it if I were to have a bag of weed and a traveller woman were to have a bag of weed, the exact same amount of grams, she would get arrested, I would get a fine and a slap on the head?
Yeah, there's a number of and actually it's very interesting because Access to Justice report is a Limerick University, and there's a couple of people there from Limerick University involved, including Cindy Joyce, who's a traveller researcher, and they have been doing a study on access to justice for travellers, which they're about to launch that report.
Good on.
So they are. So that will show us a bit more. But there's different kind of levels to this. One is the level of travellers being arrested by the guards. So, in an area, if travellers were in an area, one is kind of, if there was a crime committed in the area, the first place the guards would be the travellers. Now, they didn't see... Now, the guards, hopefully, some guards we're trying to change that picture. So, but this traditionally was the way. So, guards traditionally didn't see travellers as being victims of anything. They saw them as the perpetrators of, so that was the first. So you were more likely to be arrested, to be stopped, to be searched. I know some areas where travellers get stopped and searched, particularly if you have certain names associated with travellers in certain areas, you'll get stopped and you'll get searched all the time, like maybe 5-6 times a day, getting stopped and searched. If you say anything, you're arrested. And then, but the chances are then, when you go to court, the chances are you don't get bail because you don't have an address. You had it was an NFA, you were no fixed address. So you didn't get bail. So guilty or innocent, you were put on...
You were set up for failure from the get-go.
You were remanded in custody. Yeah. So when you came into the court for whatever charge, you were coming in from custody. So the whole thing, but and also then for crimes, much lesser crimes, travellers seem to get much higher sentences. And then when you go into prison, the treatment of travellers into prison and the exclusion and that and the racism that happens within. Now, hopefully that's changing. We're trying to change that because there's a number of initiatives, such as the Travellers in Prison initiative that came out, that came as on the back of that report. Stephen's Green Trust and a number of traveller organisations came together and set up the Travellers in Prison initiative, which is now working to a whole range of different prisons, including Docus, where the women are, the Traveller Counselling Service has a counsellor in Docus 1 day a week, and there's a number of other supports going into the prison. So hopefully there's a lot of work going on the ground that people doesn't know about, but a lot of it is being initiated by travellers. By the traveller groups, but people really don't see it. I mean, you mentioned the conflict, and I'm sure you have a question about conflict and between interfamily conflict. I mean, feuding. We tend to stay away from that word feuding because it tends to lump everything in. Really, what's going on is a conflict between two families.
Yeah, people should watch Knuckle on Netflix. How do you feel about that film?
Well, I didn't watch it.
I watched a little bit of it.
Yeah, I don't really kind of, I read the article that that they had done on the Sunday Times, and it doesn't, I think sometimes, movies or stories like that can sensationalize it or demonize it. There's no balance as to it doesn't give a context for this.
No.
And and I think I don't watch them. I don't watch them programs. That's not just Knuckle. I just don't watch that.
In general. So I'm going to quote you. Thomas McCann, director of the Traveller Counselling Service, said, "Interfamily violence has devastating consequences." Mr. McCann said, "The effect on families, individuals, children, such as people staying up all night because of fear that something might happen. Also, children and young adults that have been exposed to violence are more likely to participate in violence and the mental health effects last much longer after the physical effects have healed.
Yeah. And all of them, kind of when you look at it, and studies show that, trauma, and now you'll hear trauma used quite a lot because that's being looked at more and more, kind of like it's like post-traumatic stress syndrome. When people has been involved in violent conflict, whether it's war or whether it's kind of other types of, and have witnessed that stays with us. It can stay with us for life, actually.
Yeah.
Unless we kind of find ways of addressing that. So families do stay up all night because, of course, if you feel you're going to be attacked, you're anxious. So your anxiety levels are very high. So you're not going to be able to sleep. Nightmares, kind of, whole families are disrupted. Relationships are ruptured between brothers and sisters, between, grandparents and grandchildren, an extended family. Because if there's intermarriage and there's a conflict, it ruptures the family, and then sometimes them families don't reconnect. That, and so there's huge suffering and trauma as a result of the conflict. And long after the physical damage has passed, when I say physically, hopefully it's not too bad, but the damage to property,
financial as well.
Financial. Yeah. Long after that has passed, the trauma is still there. Yeah. And you carry that in. And studies, like the studies that have been on, research that has been on that, people who are exposed to violence are more likely to participate in violence, are more likely to participate in that violence. So it can create a cycle of violence as well, kind of as people grow up and, but for children, for everybody in families. So trying to find ways of kind of looking at that we're never going, conflict is always going to be with us. We're going to have conflict. I mean, we're going to have arguments and different types of conflict. But what we're looking at is violent conflict. Is the violence that translating into violence, but there's many causes for that, and one kind of way of looking at that, and what I think is beginning to be looked at more is what's called horizontal violence. Yeah, horizontal violence. Paulo Freire, which was an educationalist, talked about horizontal violence, and he talked about oppression. And when people are oppressed, and you see this in other groups as well, and this is the interesting thing, that, when people are oppressed, they take it out on their own people. So if you have, say, the majority community do something to you, the response is very minimalist. It's very small towards that. And you see this with travellers as well. If a set of people do something to travellers, and the response is very kind of small, so if traveller does something to another traveller, the response is huge. So there's this difference in response, and that tells us that there's certainly an element of horizontal violence going on, and that's due to internalized oppression. Because we can't, even though people mightn't be thinking about that consciously, the kind of theory is that the oppressed don't take it out on the oppressor. They take it out on their own people because it's their outlet for that, And so it's just a very interesting theory. But there's other factors as well. If you have, people who, like, we have 84% unemployment, in the downturn in 2008, all the traveller training centres was closed. So the young people who used to go to the traveller training centres have nowhere to go. Like, I mean, kind of most young travellers leave secondary school, like in about a year and a half, 2 years into secondary school, they leave it.
Yeah, like age 15 or something.
Yeah, so you have people sitting on sites, they have no outlet, they have no opportunities, they have no, trying to get a job is nearly impossible. If you talk to young travellers, they'll tell you, to get to the interview, they might send out loads of CVs not to get to an interview, so they don't get to the interview. So of course, there's a lot of drugs, kind of, not in every community, but a lot of drugs is creeping into the traveller community, same as into other communities. So it's escaping from this boredom and, kind of nothing to do. But also then there's laws in terms of the Market Trading Act, the Control of Horses Act, so it minimises all the time what travellers can do, so... Like, really, there's very little opportunities. And so that can kind of, trigger something else much easier. If you're sitting bored or whatever, and there's nothing kind of, nowhere for you to go, there's no opportunities. If you go downtown and you try to go into a pub or a bar with your friends, you're going to be stopped. So like this, it's so difficult for you, I think, particularly for younger travellers.
For sure, that's what I was going to as well, where it's like the chances of them just having raging teenage hormones as well, just like the world hates me, I hate the world. I'm going to get this can of beer because I wasn't allowed in, and I'm going to toss it, like.
Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of younger travellers don't do that towards settled people. That's what I'm saying.
They do it to each other. So.
Yeah, so you have this kind of internalized violence towards each other, but very rarely because the response of the state, the response of the guards and that towards travellers is to do some of that. It's like a sledgehammer,
I see.
So you don't. So for travellers, it's and for other groups as well, and you see this in other groups as well, where they take it out on their own people rather than take it out on others. Now, I'm not suggesting for a minute that travellers should go off and take it out on themselves. No. It should be in a kind of in a positive kind of structured way. But that's what
they're containing their anger and like
and then
having
and
it blow up.
Now I mean in some areas that as people kind of begin to have an analysis of that begins to change. Now. Here, like it's always, and we've always promoted kind of peaceful protests. We haven't promoted violence, or so hopefully we never get to that stage. That but you look at other countries, one of the biggest, like most of the conflicts around the world are ethnic conflict, are because of the denial of ethnicity or exclusion or racism,
For sure. Just even usually, I think when you were talking about the US and all that, a lot of the times people say black on black crime is significantly higher.
Yeah.
I never thought I never heard the term horizontal violence, but it makes a lot of sense as well. Yeah,
and I mean, it really does, because we naturally we internalize things, and we internalize oppression. So we do. That's how we learn. We internalize our external environment, and that's how we, so a lot of people internalize the oppression, and the racism. It's like internalized homophobia. It's like, where kind of, and it's your own group you blame, rather than the state or the system that you're in. So you end up blaming your own people.
For sure.
For the situation that they're in and that you're in. So, so you can see how that happens,
When it comes to, so a lot of the time, whenever I bring up the traveller community with people from wider Ireland, sometimes they have a lot of questions that they don't ask out of respect of culture sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, because here we are. When it comes to, like, let's say, for example, a lot of people think about like young traveller women and just like getting married very young. Is that disrespectful to question?
I don't think there's different views, like, as I say, within every community. So not all travellers are in favour of
younger that's
marriages.
like another stereotype where it's like you can't just look at the traveller woman and be like, oh, poor child bride.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't like that. I mean, the younger marriages do happen among travellers, and that has always been kind of part of traveller culture, not the total picture, but certainly part of it. Kind of, and that is something that families. But it's not about kind of. A lot of people kind of, it's like in other communities, we have to look at other communities, traditional communities. Like if you look at, say some of the Asian communities even in the UK or which is our closest neighbours, you see similar traditions. If you look at other traditions, so you do. So that wouldn't have been kind of uncommon. It wouldn't have been uncommon in Ireland, even, kind of. And there's, like, when you go back into history, there's reasons for that. But like, in terms of people only meeting up every so often, and so, kind of, because you wouldn't be staying in the one place with your neighbours, and, Here we are, like, and so you'd be meeting up every so often, and kind of, and so there'd be a number of factors for that, and a lot of the marriages would have been in the past arranged marriages, so there wouldn't have been kind of, there would have been kind of matched weddings, and would have happened then when people were old enough to get married and that, But a lot of younger travellers played a role in the family, so you had to play a role in the family. You had an active role in the family. You didn't, so you took on a role at a young age. So, so young traveller men took on a much more kind of adult role at a younger age, and likewise younger women, so it wasn't the same as the settle. It's not like with like,
Okay.
So they took on responsibilities. Now, there's good things and there's bad things about that. And I mean, like myself growing up, I had to take on responsibilities, and I was thinking, I hated taking on responsibilities and wanted to go off and do what all the other young fellas was doing, and play football all day, but that wasn't going to happen. But so it's not like with the settled person. I think where settled people are comparing it from is from their own kind of terms of reference,
Yes.
kind of from their own culture.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not. And I think you have to look at, through the lens of the culture that's happening, rather than the lens that you're looking at it from, Because otherwise you're making a judgment based on something else.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I'm asking, is because I feel like that judgment has stayed there.
Yeah, no, it has stayed there,
And it's kind of like, not just Traveller Pride, but even just like it's Pride Month, LGBT stuff and all that. Whenever this stuff is brought up, it's like, oh, no, the travellers are traditional. Like, they don't do that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but I've seen a few posts of them.
Yeah.
The community is definitely developing with the times in terms of...
like, as I say, not all travellers
not all,
agree with younger marriages. Certainly my daughter isn't married and they're in their 20s. And, or that wouldn't be the way my family was. So different families, some families are more traditional. Likewise, I'm sure
conservatives versus liberals,
and other families are not that traditional, not as traditional as they were. So you have differences within, and different opinions, and different, so you have a whole lot of difference. But certainly it was a part of travel culture, and even some families, it's very interesting that the mother and father mightn't be that keen on a younger marriage, whereas the young person is keen on the younger marriage, and so you have different types of that happen. You have different ways, so it's not as straightforward as it looks.
It's great to hear that it's diverse within itself,
and I think we need to respect that. And I think, like, it's not disrespectful to ask a question, but I think people need to realize where they're looking at it from.
Yeah.
Like, I could ask questions about the settled community or about other communities, but I'm looking at that from my own kind of term, my own space as a traveller, kind of. And so I think you can judge something based on that, the values that, and the norms of that community. And I think it's important to respect the norms and values. You don't have to agree with them.
No.
You don't have to agree with, and there's lots of different norms and values, but, kind of, but I think it's kind of understand, this is how we here, and like for the community we're in,
It's that self-awareness.
It is, it is.
I think that's where a lot of societal issues and racism comes from, is, no, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And then it's
and
like,
that's why we have this thing called ethnocentrism. Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas it's based, the norms, what's seen as the norm, is based on the majority community, And so, well, this is the norm, and this is, why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing this here? Kind of, why are you not doing it this way? This is the right way. And that really, kind of is coming from that sense of, this is the right way. Your way is the wrong way. We're right. You're wrong. We're going to change you. You can't do it that way.
And that's so sad.
Yeah, and that's the way it has been here.
Yeah, and I think it's just in general, when it comes to conversation and communication, is I feel like there's a lack of recognition that it's the middle ground. It's the happy middle where there's a compromise from one end and a compromise from the other end. It's not a win-lose.
No.
And I think that politics and policymakers right now are just focusing on win, 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 win.
Yeah, well, it's about power and votes. And if you look at accommodation, for instance, if you look at the issue of accommodation, traveller accommodation has been completely politicised, by local authorities, based on votes, based on getting a vote, and keeping travellers out of areas traditionally. Now, of course, you might have a couple of politicians who might welcome travellers in, but there's few and far between of people who, particularly in the past, who said, "Oh yeah, we want to build a site in this area. Come on in, you're welcome here." I haven't seen that happen, and, but that has been completely politicised, and you can see the impact of that. So you can. The Equality and Human Rights Commission carried out a study, a review of local authorities. And over the last 10 years, I think it was about 57 million euro that wasn't spent, that was earmarked for traveller accommodation, Now, wasn't spent across the whole country by local authorities, while at the same time, there was no accommodation, no traveller accommodation being built. There's overcrowding going on in the sites where there is travellers, overcrowding, and sometimes that leads to dangerous kind of conditions, terrible consequences for some families. So you have, and also then forces people into trying to get settled accommodation. And of course, with the racism, we talked about the hotels earlier on, it's nearly impossible for travellers to get private rented accommodation. Yeah. So what you have is, you have this huge increase in traveller homelessness happening.
For sure.
Which is, I think it's about 40% of homeless now are travellers. We didn't have that before,
And
so
why?
It's another.
It
sounds like a very depressing. It's a depressing situation.
Oh yeah, but it has to be spoken about. And the thing is that I understand me questioning it isn't making a difference. But what is the goal here? Do they want you to dwindle down?
They want to get rid of you. Literally. That was the aim. In that report that I mentioned earlier on, the 1963 itinerancy report, the opening statement in that, by Charles Haughey, who was the Taoiseach of this country for quite a long time, and we've seen, Charlie Haughey. I don't know if you know much about Charlie Haughey, but there's a whole history there. He was the chairperson of that. He was chaired in that. He was kind of the minister at the time, junior minister at the time. And he was chaired in that. And he said, in the opening statement on that report, and I'd invite people to have a look, who's looking at this podcast, to look on the internet, the itinerancy report 1963, and they'll see this in the opening kind of lines, that there can be no final solution to the problems created by itinerants until they're absorbed into the wider community. That was the aim of the state. It was to annihilate traveller culture. Was the and that mindset. So it's like, that's kind of maybe people aren't saying that, but a lot of people would like us to disappear off the planet.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, in 2017, I think about 40% of Irish people said they wouldn't give us citizenship.
Stop.
So that report was carried out by Behaviour and Attitudes. Have a look.
Disgusting.
Again, that's online. These are independent kind of research.
What made them so comfortable in saying this shit?
Because this was, for so long, for hundreds of years, this was so normalised. I read a piece of legislation I couldn't believe in the 1500s, and it's in the National Library. At the minute, as I say, I've been an activist for a long time, and I've studied, and now I'm back trying to finish a PhD. There's a piece of legislation in the National Library.
Okay.
And in the 1500s, there was anti-vagrancy laws, brought in.
Okay.
And if you were a traveller, and tinkers, which was travellers would have been called at the time, tinkers,
Okay.
which is and gypsies was named in it as well. So there are two separate groups at that time in the 1500s. Okay. If you wandered into a town, as a traveller in the 1500s, you could be stripped to the waist and whipped until you were bleeding, and then sent back to where you came from, by anybody. Now that was that was, so you can see this. this ingrained racism and exclusion that was there going way back, and that really kind of, that's the history that we're coming from, that this was so normalized. That's why I was saying earlier on, it would have been impossible to avoid this. If you grew up in Ireland as a traveller and as a settled person, it would have been impossible to get through this loop without being affected in some way, even unconsciously. So, so it's there, for many centuries. And now that's what we're trying to change. And, we need settled people, because it's really it's settled people that need to change. I know, as I say, we have a diverse community of travellers, and we all need to change together. But really, in terms of the exclusion and the racism, it's settled people that need to change that, and the state,
Exactly. They have to let go of their thinking. Yeah,
that we're not entitled or something to be here. That we're not equal. To the settled community, because we live a different lifestyle, or because we're nomadic, or because we come from a different community, or but that we're not equal. That we're not seen as equal, and certainly we're not.
Oh, that's so shit. So
it is. It is, yeah.
So we're going to talk about now the suicide epidemic.
Yeah.
You recently, very recently actually, June 1st, correct? There was a protest.
There was a protest, yeah.
The second one of this year.
May 31st.
May 31st, June 1st, the article came out.
Right, so okay, right.
There you go.
Yeah.
No. You corrected me, as you said. How was that, first of all?
It was very good. It was a very good protest. The whole team of it was organised by the National Traveller Mental Health Network, which is a network of travellers and traveller organisations from across Ireland. So it's all the traveller organisations and travellers who's linked into this network.
Okay.
And the focus is on mental health, but not just on the symptoms, but also on the contributing factors. So we talked about education, or we talked about employment, or we talked about, the accommodation. If you're in an overcrowded accommodation for families and you have minimal conditions available to you, particularly during the COVID pandemic, it's very hard to isolate. It's very hard to do anything. But it's also like with everybody else, if you're stuck in a place for a long time, people, you're more likely to get depressed. You're more likely to as earlier on we were saying about, where's the employment, where's the training, where's the opportunities, you're more likely to get stressed. And then, of course, poverty, So people, but anyway, the network decided that we need to highlight this. And, minister after minister and, committee after committee has failed to actually implement some of the recommendations that was made over the decades. And so we wanted accountability for this. And so we looked for a meeting with the Taoiseach last year to actually look at, well, why is this the case? Why is these things not being implemented? Why is the local authorities not spending 57 million that was there? So it's not about the money, so we need somebody to be accountable. We need somebody to say, well, actually, hang on a second, this has to stop. And so the Taoiseach is the head of government and is responsible for government, in the country. And so we wanted a meeting with the Taoiseach. Unfortunately, the response that we got from the first, which was on International Human Rights Day in 2021, we held a protest outside of the Dáil to mark International Human Rights Day, and we handed in a letter, which the Taoiseach's office, there was no one there to accept it. But anyway, but we gave in the letter anyway, and the response was very disappointing. In fact, travellers were really kind of disappointed.
What was the response?
The response didn't even acknowledge that we looked for a meeting. The response was, this is happening with this report and that report and the other report, and none of this is translating into action on the ground. And travellers on the ground know this. But there was no mention of, we're too busy or whatever. Or there was no mention of a meeting,
Silly.
So we said, look, we need to, the community, what came from the community was we need to go back again and look again for a meeting. And so we decided, okay, we're going to go back again.
Yeah.
And this is what the protest on the 31st was about. And it was about accountability. Really, the issue is accountability, that the state needs to be held accountable for what's happened to travellers, because that report in 1963 set the scene for all of this stuff. And that hasn't changed that much. So the state needs to be held to account.
Yeah.
And of course, the Taoiseach is head of government. He's head. So
yeah, unfortunately, he's the guy.
Yeah, he's and that's who we wanted some discussions with. But how he'll respond to this letter, I don't know. We handed in another letter. And look, like, this is not going to disappear. I mean, earlier on when you were saying, in the past, there might have been a protest that kind of happened and then it went, kind
of dwindled down. Yeah.
This is different.
Okay.
What's happening is different in the community. I think there's a consciousness in the community that's saying no, this is not going to dwindle down, and we're not going to let this dwindle down. And I hope that the Taoiseach responds positively, because I think there's a, like, it is building up, and I think it's going to build up more. But one thing that was kind of mentioned to me, because we wrote a letter of invitation to a lot of allies, to a lot of different groups, equality groups, anti-racist groups, unions, students' unions, all across. And, on the day, I think, we had a huge number of travellers and individual allies. But unfortunately, the ally groups, didn't come up on the day, didn't turn up on the day, And that was a bit disappointing for some travellers. And some travellers has flagged with me and came to me and said, listen, we're disappointed that the groups didn't turn out on the day, kind of, because, like, we supported quite a lot of groups. Yeah. Black Lives Matter, for instance, we supported some of the other struggles, the housing struggles, the anti-war struggle, we would have supported an awful lot of struggles. So we we would have liked that kind of support back, because this is an issue that doesn't just affect travellers,
Yeah.
Like, equality is not a hierarchical thing,
We all benefit from it.
Absolutely. And equality is, and so if we're going to get an equal society, we need to make sure that everybody is, kind of, so on the day, people were disappointed. Some people were disappointed. Some travellers were disappointed. Some traveller activists, that we didn't get the support from them other ally groups.
Yeah.
Now, individuals might have turned up, but we needed the groups.
No, you need those.
Yeah, we need the networks. We need, kind of them to mobilise their own people.
And unfortunately, right? And this is just like my marketing brain thinking, but the reaction you would have gotten would have most likely been if you publicly called them out. But I understand wanting to avoid that conflict too.
Yeah. And I think, like, I think that's been the way in the past that, like, if you look at traveller protests, you get very few of the allied groups coming out. You get all the traveller groups coming out and that, but very few of the allied groups coming out and actually standing in solidarity with travellers. And really, that needs to change.
Yes.
And, like, I hope it does change, because actually it will be called out, because I think travellers are saying, well, hang on a second.
No, there will be a turning point if nothing happens.
And that's, so, but it's not going to kind of dwindle out. I mean, people, like, I think that, as I say, there's a consciousness in the community, and there is more and more people, more and more travellers becoming much more active, in different forms. And so it's not the same as it was 20 years ago, when maybe 30 years ago, when we only had a handful of people involved. Now there's a lot of people involved, across the country. At all different levels. So I think, that's going to continue. So I hope the Taoiseach's response is a positive one, kind of in terms of engaging in dialogue about how because Mags Casey, the chairperson of the network, as she says, like, the community, like, we've come up with a lot of solutions to things, even under all including to the conflict. Like, you have the Traveller Mediation Service that's made up of travellers and settled people who work onto traveller sites with families who's involved in conflict, you know.
Wow.
So we have people working into the prisons, travellers working into the prisons, you know, with travellers in the prisons, you know. We have people in the community working to the community. But it's travellers that's doing it, you know. So we have some of the solutions as well, likewise around mental health. Mm-hmm. We have some of the kind of some of the ways that some of these issues might be dealt with from the community. But unfortunately, the community has been ignored in this, you know. Yeah. And that's, you know, you might sit down around the table and to get your opinion, and then a report comes with a recommendation, and then it doesn't change anything on the ground. And you think, well, what happened to that? And that's what people are asking. Why are we still sitting there? Why are we still going to these meetings? From the community, that's what's being asked of the activists and the representatives. Why are you still sitting at them tables when it's not making any change for the community on the ground? When people are still losing their lives, like, I mean, you know, through suicide, and the drugs rate has gone through the roof, and there's no change in the unemployment. Why are you still sitting and talking to, you know?
I'm going to quote Senator Eileen Flynn, because her speech was really moving.
It was, yeah.
"The shame that I feel as a senator sitting in that house is absolutely unbelievable," Flynn said. "As a senator for the travelling community, I have been for 2 years begging the Minister for Mental Health to take responsibility, to stop our young men, our young women dying from suicide. 2 years I've been doing this. This is my third time to speak in 2 years at the Traveller Mental Health Network protest. How many travellers have died in 2 years? It is so tough to be yourself and be a member of the traveller community. You walk up the street and someone has something to say to you, just because you're a traveller. We're not treated as second-class citizens in this state. We're treated as rubbish."
And that's the reality for a lot of travellers, you know, that's the reality for a lot of travellers. And what Eileen Flynn was referring to there in terms of the Minister for Mental Health, in the programme for government, in this government, they committed to developing a national traveller mental health strategy, which had been kind of recommended by the all-party and a cross-party Oireachtas committee, yeah? And so it went into the programme for government. That's what was meant to happen. There has been absolutely no action on that at all. And, you know, the shared and division was the big thing for mental health. That's a national strategy for everybody in the country. And what we've seen from national strategies is that it's not going to address, because of the crisis in the travel community and because it's a national issue, there needs to be, and because it needs to be from a culturally inclusive perspective, there needs to be a standalone mental health strategy that was promised in the programme for government. But there's absolutely no action on that. There's nothing happening on that at all. The shared and division is a 10-year strategy. This government will be long gone before anything is done in terms of shared and division. So, you know, that programme for government is going to be gone. So, like, you know, what travellers want is they want what was promised. And that's what we're saying. There's no accountability. They can, you know, say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, even when it gets into the programme for government. And then nothing, you know. I mean, that's from government.
Yeah, like,
you know?
Do you think we're stupid?
Like, I mean, that's, you know, so you sit down around tables, you do all this, you know, you get, you know, cross-party committee to recommend it. It's in the future for mental health in Ireland, you know, and then it gets into the programme for government and said, right, that's part of the programme, that's part of your programme. And then nothing after 2 years. And that's what Eileen is talking to there in terms of the Minister for Mental Health. She hasn't done anything on developing the strategy at all, you know.
Unreal.
No, you can, I mean, anyone listening in or any representative, you can check that out.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I've come across Eileen Flynn when she got elected, and I came across some transcript of hers and the way she holds herself. Yeah, Eileen is great. Eileen's, you know, she's a real advocate for the community, and I mean, she is, you know, and you know, at huge cost to herself at times, you know. And I think that, you know, Eileen grew up in the same site that I said in Ballyfermot in Labra Park. Okay. Eileen's family lives there all their life as well. Now, I was there a bit before Eileen, kind of a few years and left and that. But that's where Eileen's family live, on Labra Park. So Eileen grew up in that site and went to school in Ballyfermot and all that, you know, and
her kind of parents and that would have been around the time I was there more so, than Eileen, but and her uncles and that, so they would have been involved in some of the stuff, and Cherry Orchard and that, so they would. So Eileen's been struggling. They've been struggling a long time for exactly what we're talking about here. So, like, the experience of Eileen is very similar to the experience of most other travellers that you talk to across the country, including myself.
It's I think very symbolically, I don't know why, but this grand issue that you guys are facing with literally just reminded me of the story that you told me of teachers not giving you homework or just automatically assuming what else are they going to go up, like, add up to. And it's as if you're having that same treatment.
Yeah, it is.
But you're not a kid at a desk.
Yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah, you're being dismissed,
You're being dismissed, yes.
Kind of, and we're going to do this, and it's like, the plans is there, and then nothing. So, like, it's like you were never there, and like, if you look at the services, like we talked about mental health and the suicide, like, travellers aren't counted. There's no ethnic identifier in many of the services. If you go down to a service down the road and you say, how many travellers is using your service? They won't tell you, because they don't differentiate between travellers and settled people. So, like, travellers are invisible in a lot of the systems. So they are. And I think that was, kind of, if people are invisible, it's very hard to establish rights.
Very hard. Yes, I remember, like, signing up for universities for my master's degree. And it was, what race? Like, are you black, white? Yeah. And then all the different shades. Yeah. And it wasn't for me, but I was actually thinking, I'm like, but if a traveller's white.
Yeah, if you're white traveller, and that's the thing. And there are black travellers as well.
Yes.
But it's not. There was no differentiation. There, you weren't counted, even though the treatment was very different. And like, people say, we treat everybody the same. That
bullshit.
Is absolutely. They're not treated the same in most of the services. So, like, you're not being counted, but you're not being treated the same. So, you don't know what kind of a service people are getting, how many people came to that service, how many times did they come to that service, what was the outcomes, what was the issues that they came with. So all of that,
and you need that data.
You need the data. Yeah. If you're going to plan a service to address a crisis, you try and capture some of the data.
Not unfortunately, but fortunately enough, numbers at the end of the day are those things that can't be questioned the most. Yeah. So that's what you need. Yeah. And already the stats are disgusting to look at. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And if only they were more accurate. Yeah. And I think that's what, kind of, and even though these issues, like, there was, say, for instance, there was a 2008 intercultural health strategy, developed. 2008, we're talking about, quite a few years ago now. It was 2008 to 2013. There was a number of things going to happen in the intercultural health strategy. One of them was there was going to be an ethnic identifier. Didn't happen. The second thing was there was going to be intercultural, kind of, in the 2006 Vision for Change, which was the mental health strategy. There was a key recommendation was there was going to be culturally inclusive services, mental health services. Didn't happen. There was hardly any conversations between then and now about how that happens. So you can see how travellers over the decades has looked at this and said, and each time something happens, on paper, that looks really good, and then nothing happens for people. Nothing happens. In 1983, there was a report carried out by the review body. It was a government body, and at that stage, it was recommended that there would be transient sites for travellers. What we have now is we have a ban on travellers travelling in the country. So, like, you can see how this, doesn't fare very well for travellers, even though some of the recommendations and some of the reports that happened over the decades, the 1998 Task Force report, which was a very progressive report in itself, there was a huge number of recommendations. Many of them recommendations never got implemented. That was
kind of. So that's the kind of implementation, the lack of implementation that you have, and the lack of accountability. Nobody is held accountable for this,
It's very disheartening.
It is, yeah, it is. It really is. But we have to have hope as well. And so, kind of, okay, the state mightn't be kind of given us that hope, because they certainly haven't instilled much hope for travellers. At every turn, they have kind of gone the other way, really. So they have. So it's traveller activists and traveller organisations on the ground that's instilling that hope in terms of saying, look, we can change this collectively. But the key and the clear message to others is that we need the support of settled people to do this.
Yeah.
We don't have the voting capacity. If we were a major kind of union, or we were the farmers, or we were the industrialists, we'd have negotiating power. We don't have that same power. We are a small community kind of that's being completely excluded from society, and really that's having terrible consequences, for generations. And I think that, so we need the support. We need that support.
When it comes to the mental health service that you run, the counselling service, what is a common issue that a lot of your patients come to you with?
Right. Okay.
In terms of mental health.
Yeah, there's a whole range of issues that people present with, and we capture the statistics, anonymized statistics, and we put them up on the web, our website. So if people want to have a look at that, that's the Traveller Counselling Service.ie, and people can have a look at the statistics. We put them up there, and the presenting issues, there's many presenting issues. Usually the issues that travellers present are multiple issues. So they're not single issues. So it's very different from private practice or, people someone coming with an issue that they want to address. Travellers come and they have multiple issues. Depression and anxiety are huge among travellers, suicidal ideation, that people are actually coming, and addiction issues, and some of these issues we can see we've tracked them, so we can actually see an increase in some things, So over the years we've been collecting them type of statistics, I think, since about 2012, so we can actually track what issues are people are presenting with more as time goes on. One of the biggest issues that's changed is homelessness. People presenting to the service who are homeless. For sure. So that has increased year on year. So it has.
And the standard of living has risen too.
Yeah.
So they can't keep up.
And so we see this, even though on one level you're told that there's zero unemployment or very low unemployment in the settled community, that the standard of living is raising. At the same time, these are the issues that's raising for travellers, but there's a number of issues, certainly depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, bereavement is huge. And you have multiple levels of bereavement. So before travellers kind of have dealt with one bereavement, there's sometimes another bereavement and sometimes another bereavement before they get a chance to deal with the origin. So there's multiple levels of bereavement, which I think we need to look at. How do you deal with multiple levels of bereavement? It's not a single bereavement, and a lot of the kind of bereavement kind of interventions are based on individual bereavement, not on multiple layers of bereavement. I mean, as I said, Max Casey, who's the chairperson of the National Traveller Mental Health Network, has lost 29 members of her family, and her immediate and extended family, in the last 10 years to suicide.
Stop.
That's, like when you look at that's more than 2 members a year. That's nearly 3 people a year has kind of died by suicide every year for 10 years.
It sounds like something when you're out at war instead. What I mean?
Yeah, and some people have said that. They said you wouldn't lose as many people if you were at war.
Yeah.
As many members of your family, which is probably true, So that's the reality for travellers. And so that's what people are presenting with. There's other issues then. You have a whole range of issues, whether it's addiction, and what types of addiction. You have domestic violence, you have interfamily violence, you have all of them things, but at the top of the scale, you have bereavement and depression and suicidal ideation, them is the big things, and of course homelessness, as I said,
Never would have assumed that bereavement would have been.
Yeah, it's huge. Oh, huge in the community.
Yes.
Absolutely huge, And like the services that's there sometimes, and we need to engage with the services as well. The services do the best, the mainstream services do the best they can, but sometimes they won't engage with somebody until after a certain period of time, for the bereavement. But like that's, if you're looking at it through that lens of a single bereavement, and this person's, but like 3 months earlier or 6 months earlier, the person might have lost somebody else or somebody else before that.
It's a pile-up.
So so that's the reality for travelers' lives,
For sure. And I don't know, you obviously have more of a say on this, and this is not specific to travellers, right? There's a mental health crisis in Ireland nationwide.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at the mental health services, especially ones that the free ones, because not everyone can afford this, is that they are automatically put on a waiting list.
Yeah.
Unless there is suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
And that obviously results in most people ending their life, eh?
Yeah.
What is your perception on this? Or
I think that needs to change.
Yeah.
People need help when they go for help. You have a lot of these campaigns encouraging people to kind of reach out for help.
But unfortunately, there's a limited amount of people that can take on,
but so you need people, when they do reach out for help, they need to be met with the service that they need.
Yes.
And the state is not doing that. And hasn't been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
So they haven't. And I mean, like so like all these campaigns, they sound great. Oh, look for help, and you have a lot of people look. And
mental health is normal, like as a keyword.
Yeah,
it's no longer taboo.
So talk about it. Go out. But you need the services there to meet people, and you need the waiting list that's there for settled people, for children. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. I think like for a wealthy nation, I mean, we can find money for many other things when we need to, like if you look at the banks, if you look at other things, we could find billions for lots of different things when it's needed. But when it's really needed for people who do need help, and I'm talking about families and children, and not just travellers, who need support, and it's not there when it's needed. I think that's terrible. I think it's a terrible indictment of Irish society that it's not available. Like if you look at homelessness among settled people, I mean, if you look at the number of people who's in homeless accommodation, families, children, trying to get children to school from B&Bs, like it's just unbelievable that we can't accommodate the number of people who's in homelessness, and who has to lose their property because of the property bubble getting bigger and bigger, and prices, and they're not able to pay the mortgages or whatever. Yeah. I think it's a terrible indictment in this society that we're not able to cater for the needs, not just the travellers, but of the community who can't compete in this environment, and who fall short of that. Like, it's just unbelievable. Particularly, I think, around the mental health stuff for young people and for families, and the waiting lists. Like, why can we not meet people where they're at? Why can we not provide the service? Is it lack of money? Now, I know they're saying about recruitment and all the rest of it. Like
the amount of charity runs I've seen raising funds for whichever ones, and I'm not saying that the money doesn't go to them. I know for a fact that the money goes to them. It's like, what the fuck are they doing with that money, though? Yeah,
I think what's happened is, and I think like a lot of the charities try to pick up the slack where the state falls down. Yeah, so the charities are stepping into that breach, because there's no, they don't see an alternative. But what happens is that sometimes the state just carries on not providing
because they're okay with the charities,
and they support the charities and kind of give them a bit of money, and so. Like the Traveller Counselling Service might fall into this bracket as well, but at the same time, what we should be working towards is that the state provides for everybody.
Yeah.
In fact, the Traveller Counselling Service shouldn't be there at all. If we were living in a state that provided for everybody, there wouldn't be a need for the Traveller Counselling Service. We wouldn't be in existence. The state would be catering properly for travellers. you know, and for traveller needs. And we wouldn't be in this state at all. We wouldn't be in this the conditions that we're in. So the state needs to be held to account. And I just don't think by travellers. I think really we need collectively.
Yes.
We need collective accountability. That's what we need. And particularly people who's in disadvantaged communities, people who can't, who doesn't have the voice, and people with mental health problems, you know, that doesn't have the wherewithal to kind of challenge the state. I think we need, as Max Casey said, we are the voice on their behalf. We need to collectively call the state out and look for that accountability. And I think that's what, you know, hopefully, not just around traveller issues. If we get it, that's what I'm saying, equality is not a hierarchical thing. We don't, one group here gets it and then all the rest is at the bottom. I think we need this we need equality in this society for all, not just for a few, you know, and that's the way it is at the minute. It's for the few who can afford it and who doesn't have them problems and can go to the, I hope I never have to visit Blackrock Clinic, because at Blackrock Clinic you can be seen within like, you know, a couple of hours, or the Beacon, or you hear them advertising, come, you'll see it straight away. Like, you want no waiting lists, you know. You go to on the public health, you'll be waiting for 24 hours to be seen. So you will. And then if you're looking for a procedure or even an appointment with a consultant, you could be waiting 6 months, you know. And that's the reality for people's lives. And you might be waiting even longer, if, you know, kind of. So it's not an equal society we live in. It's an unequal. Now, I don't want to get into too much,
but you're the guy to talk about this. You know, but like, I kind of see it
as totally unequal. We're living in a totally unequal society.
It's easier to get antidepressants than it is to get therapy.
Absolutely. And if you look at the extent of antidepressants that's being prescribed to people, it's like medicating people into kind of into the state. I know there's a huge number of travellers on antidepressants, much higher than in the settled community, you know, so there is. And that's done in a study that was carried out by some of the pharmacists that deal with travellers, you know, kind of that there's a huge number of travellers on antidepressants. But the interesting thing is that the travellers isn't being referred on to the services from the GPs.
Exactly. They're just getting a prescription.
They're getting the prescription and off to go and out the door.
And you know, it's so bad. And that's my take on the whole antidepressant like concept is, of course, if you need help and if medicine is there to help you, fine and dandy, cool beans, you know, but it's what you do after it. And that's where it's like flopping. Because I'm not saying if you are meant to be on antidepressants your whole life, then okay. But you still need that help. You still need that outlet.
A woman called Dorothy Rowe wrote a book, and I went to a lecture years ago when I was studying psychotherapy.
Okay.
In the Royal College of Surgeons. And one of the things she said is that antidepressants do not give you insight into your condition. You know, they might stabilize you or they might help you manage a day, but they don't give you insight. The only thing that gives you insight is kind of reflecting on the condition and looking at, well, why am I in this? What's going on in this? And, you know, I thought that was a very interesting insight, you know, kind of that we need insight into why people have these conditions, and the medical model is a bit short on insight. You know, I have to say, now not all. I mean, I know I'm going to get slated for this, but you know, this I come from a very kind of social determinants kind of perspective. You know, the people's environment, where they live, the context that they live in, you know, what's going on around them, the pressures that's on them, contribute to how we are, how we feel about ourselves, and you know, and it couldn't but. So I think we need medication. I wouldn't be anti-medication, you know, because people do have to be able to manage their everyday lives.
Yes, if they're not in if they are in an unstable condition,
so I'm
they
not
need to be
anti-medication.
stabilized. Yes.
But I have to say, we need to also include that social determinants model about why people develop some of these conditions and the way they are, because it's definitely, you know, we can see the connection between the social conditions and that people live in and the symptoms that they have. Sometimes we can see them, you know, and that's shown more and more in people, and you can see that, you know.
Completely agree.
So
we
need to do that. So we do.
The future of travellers.
The future of travellers. Well, from if I must ask any, I mean, maybe travellers are kind of positively disposed. I mean, some people says, well, we've survived to this point. kind of. So, with a lot of different things happen to us over the centuries. So we've survived up to now. So a lot of people feel that the future for travellers is brighter because, because there's much more traveller engagement, much more awareness, and like a lot of younger travellers are coming up, and kind of maybe there's more of an analysis, there's more of a collective drive to change. People are more politicized, a bit more politicized,
True.
kind of. So I think, and also then you have a whole European dimension to this as well, where you have 12 million Roman travellers across Europe, and I think kind of that also has an impact in terms of the European Union, because we're part of the European Union. And it's very interesting. I mean, the question for a lot of travellers, I mean, all travellers that I know support the Ukrainians, for instance, support and kind of really kind of,
they empathize with the situation.
Absolutely, and see what happened, and kind of and applaud what the government has done for, and the Irish state has done for Ukrainians. But the question that it raises is that, they can act when they want. They can act when they want, and we can see that. So why can't this happen for travellers as well, for other groups in society as well?
Yeah.
And it's not in any way to take away. I think, travellers and myself applaud what's happened for Ukrainians and encourage and kind of are very supportive. But it shows you that the government can act and the state can act when it wants to act. Refugees and asylum seekers who's in direct provision centres for 15 years, kind of, why can't the state act in the same way? Why can't it act in the same way towards travellers? Why can't it act in the same way towards them homeless families I was talking about?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, everyone is talking about that.
And again, it's in no way to take away from the Ukrainians. And as I say, I support the Ukrainian people 100%, and sympathise and empathise with them. And but it shows you that the state can act when it wants.
When it wants. And it's going to sound very pessimistic of me, but it is literally just like looking politically correct.
Yeah, at that international level as well, in the European.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of like.
Which, for sure, I understand, but isn't it something to boast about if you housed all these homeless people of your own? Yeah, your human rights record, and also, and like if you look at, now I don't want to get too political about it because there's other issues. I mean, like if you look at Brexit, for instance, and you look at what's gone on with the Brexit debate in Europe, and you look at the Ukrainian thing, I know I don't want to put them into the same mix, but no.
There's all kinds of negotiations going on, and and the Irish government kind of, and I, as I say, I applaud the action that the Irish government has taken. I think they've done very well,
and it's kind of like kudos. Your model works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give it to us now, please.
But why isn't it happening for the rest of the community? Why isn't it happening for travellers, for homeless people? Yeah, because they're not the same, they're not seen as the same. And the same for refugees and asylum seekers and other groups whose inner city groups. I live in the South inner city, and like, again, for decades, there's poverty, unemployment, poor housing, all of them issues, but they're not addressed in the same ways. Whereas, kind of, you have a situation like this, and other people has come from war-torn situations as well, and not to compare them, but they haven't been treated in the same way. And I think it's, Europe, I think, has an impact on that and all the things that's going on within that,
For sure. What will help travellers, and how can the settled community help travellers?
I think, really, it's kind of to understand. I think the settled community need to understand that this is not only a traveller issue. This is not a traveller. This is a societal issue, and that it doesn't only affect travellers. This affects everybody. This, like, I know we're badly affected, probably at the sharp end of it, but this affects everybody. This, everybody's life is affected by this. And the more we can change that, the better society it is for everybody, for everybody's children. As we said about earlier on, the waiting lists, the homelessness, kind of like, if we're going to change that, we want a more equal society where people feel, yeah, actually, it's a society worth contributing to. It's a society, I'm a stakeholder in it, If we want to cut down on the crime, if we want to kind of cut out the drugs, if we want to cut out that, we need people to feel that they're stakeholders in the society, But there's many people in this society that don't feel stakeholders in this society. They're not allowed to be stakeholders because they're not treated in the same fashion as everybody else. So, I think what I would ask settled people is to stand in solidarity. That's as much as travellers want from settled people, is to stand in solidarity to get, to help settled people as well as travellers get what we need to get and get accountability from this stage. That's what travellers would ask for, and also for the hoteliers to start opening their doors and letting people have weddings and stop being so racist.
Hold businesses accountable.
Now, I know I'm going to get slated for that, but that's the reality of it,
No. It's right in your face.
Yeah, and really, that's what needs to happen. I mean, licenses should be checked. Hoteliers' licenses should be checked. So they should, and indeed, licensed vintners. I mean, we're sitting in a pub here, upstairs in the pub. Travellers getting served in pubs, licenses need to be challenged around and hotel licenses, particularly I think for marriages or for birthdays or that's supposed to be public venues. That's there for the public. They're not private venues. They're not like, they're there for the public. Yeah. So they should be open to everybody, Yes. And I think really that we need to, and I think there's a couple of things that might help that process. One is an ombudsman for travellers.
Okay.
Similarly to an ombudsman for children.
Okay.
That can challenge some of the establishments and the institutions independently. And I think that has shown, if you look at children, the ombudsman for children, and you look at the shift, in terms of children's rights, you look at that and you take that as maybe kind of not an exact model of what might happen for travellers, but a similar model. If you look at that, you see that can really shift the ground in terms of how groups have the same rights as everybody else and is taken into account in policy, is taken into account in practice.
For sure. It's kind of like, we'll get in touch with the ombudsman and say,
the ombudsman then goes out independently and does an inquiry and can get the records, can get that. Yes. And I think that's one thing that could have an impact.
Keep your staff in check, keep businesses in check.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. And we really need that. We really need something like that. An institutional framework that kind of can challenge the institutions, because it's individuals. You're looking at individuals who's in very disadvantaged conditions, unemployed, who's expected to assert their rights through the courts. You have to exhaust the court system, and you don't have the resources to do it. I was in court with somebody recently supporting a family, and the way the local authority was treating this family on the north side of Dublin. I won't say where, but so the man is in a court case against the local authority for taking his animals, taking his horses. And so we were talking to a barrister and a solicitor. If he was to take a case, if he was to take the council to court, the barrister said to us, it would cost €50,000. Now, this man is on the dole.
Yeah.
You're not. I said, look, we're not going to get that kind of money. Well, he said, unfortunately, if the money isn't there, he said, you can't take a case. There's no way you can take a case unless some organisation or some kind of institution takes a case on your behalf. You can't. So there's no, and it's an individual. Like there's no class action in Ireland. So you can't say, right, okay, this affects a whole group of people. Yeah. So we take a collective case. Because we don't have a class action. So them things really limit. Although rights might be in paper, say people have this rights, and them rights have to be asserted in court.
Yes.
And if you don't have the wherewithal and the resources to do that, then that's not going to happen. And so for many people, even though their rights is being breached every day of the week, they can't assert them rights because they don't have the resources and they don't have the education and they don't have the wherewithal to do that.
Yes.
So that's why we need a mechanism that can really support people to do that. And I think an ombudsman, for travellers would be one way of doing that, and the ombudsman would be independent. So it wouldn't be that there'd be, kind of taking the side of travellers, solely. They'd be looking at it independently, and they'd be doing their assessment based on that. And
which is fair.
Which is fair, yeah,
yes.
Because you want it to be fair. You don't want preferential treatment.
No.
What you want is fairness.
Exactly.
And I think that's why I think an ombudsman for travellers would be a really good step in the right direction. As one thing. I think the second thing would be an independent accommodation agency that takes the accommodation issue out of the hands of the local authority, because while it's politicised, travellers believe, and many others believe, that we're never going to have proper traveller accommodation as long as it's in the hands of elected representatives. And so, like the roads authority, for instance, if you look at that, where you take it out of the hands of the local authority until there's a level playing pitch, and then then the local authority can take it back over, you hand it back over. That's, that would have certain powers as well. CPO land, because if land is in an area, more than likely there's going to be opposition to it. Mm-hmm. And local politicians, it's not going to go against the local electorate. They're just not, because that's where their votes come from.
Yes.
So, you can see how this issue is not going to be addressed unless there's a change in how we do things, And them changes wouldn't take a huge amount of effort, but would create a huge amount of change in the process in terms of, how we engage with travellers, the type of accommodation, and indeed rights in terms of people's access to rights,
For sure. What do you have to say to a traveller listening to this?
I'd say, get involved. Get involved. The only way we can bring change, and I believe, I think, with all of that I've talked about, and all of them issues, and they are, every day of the week, I believe that we can bring about change. And I believe every single person, can get involved, and collectively we can bring small changes ourselves individually, but collectively we can bring a much bigger change. So to become involved, there's a local traveller group, and there's loads of local traveller groups nearly in every area now around the country, in every county anyway. And if there's not one in your local area, give me a shout, and I'll link you up with some group.
He's great on email, by the way.
So no, get involved. I think it's to be involved, to understand what the issues are, and understand what, positively, what kind of positive change is needed that will bring change for travellers, but also for others as well. Because I think that's what's needed. I think collectively we can create that change, both for travellers and for settled people. And I said the same to settled people. Get involved. Get involved in creating the change that you want. Otherwise we're kind of, we're going along and we're accepting something that really isn't in our own interest, or isn't in the interest of anyone else. It's not in the interest of society for me to ignore the issues that's happening to travellers. It's just not in the interest of society. And it's not in the interest of anybody else to ignore the issues either. We have to get involved if we want a better society to live in the future, or even now. So get involved, bring be the change that you want to be. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, Gandhi.
So get involved. Martin Luther King, all of the people who, Nelson Mandela, any of them people, any of them great people that kind of was really kind of oppressed, excluded. All the things that happened to them, that's how they brought about the change that they brought. Collectively, they came together with people and said, right, how do we bring about this change? How do we? And they did. Some of them changed the world, not only the societies they lived in.
Who is your greatest inspiration, Thomas?
I think there's probably, kind of Martin Luther King is, now I have to say, Martin Luther King is one side of it, and, Malcolm X is the other. There's kind of,
I like that combo.
Because there was a debate going on, and it's a debate that goes on in many kind of communities and societies, and you can see why people kind of feel the need to resort to kind of direct action, and Gandhi, for instance, Gandhi was, kind of, again, non-violence. He really promoted that whole cause of non-violence while you had, kind of Nelson Mandela, who had been in the ANC and who kind of, so you have, there's a number of different people, but they all really, at the end of the day, I mean, in the north of Ireland, you have some huge kind of change as well that went on. That kind of, so there's many people around the world who brought change, from very difficult situations.
Yeah.
And I think, I think we can take inspiration from that, that people have done that. And I think we have enough inspirational people around today, everyday people who's kind of doing all kinds of things,
Thomas, I'm not here to kiss your ass, but you have showed up on nearly every article where I wanted to do some research on traveller activism. So you're also doing the part.
I might have shown up. I don't know if I'm that inspirational, but there are.
No, you're doing it. You
talked about Eileen Flynn, kind of at a cost of themselves. Who's, kind of, that's, I think, there's many people out there who's kind of,
And
Max
I'm glad.
Casey,
I'm glad to talk to you, though. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me, and I really appreciate you having me. And hopefully, collectively, and the media that you're doing here leads to an awareness and does bring change for wider society as well as for travellers. Because collectively, I think we can live be in a much happier, more prosperous, more equal society is possible. I mean, if we don't have that belief, kind of, we're doomed to inequality and racism and poverty, and I just don't want to accept that as, kind of going forward. I think we have, the future hasn't been created yet, we have the potential to. Yeah.
I hope I did the traveller community justice in this conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for listening as well.
Longer Days Collective.